Hello stitch lovers, my name is Sarah Rakestraw from Golden Hind. Are you looking forward to our next stitch? So today we're going to be going over just a brief version of applique and how to do that. So here we go. So this technique that we're doing requires you applying a piece of fabric, and this is a really nice piece of fabric that I've got here. This is the right side and this is the wrong side, so you can see it's a little bit lighter. So it's all about, you know, you might have a very plain background, you might be doing a collage, you might be doing a quilt, you're applying this onto the fabric. So it's applique, applying, that's why it's called applique. Okay, so what we're doing is we're going to take a small piece of this fabric and we're going to apply it onto our backing fabric. Okay, now there's a few different ways of doing applique. I will explain some of them. I'm going to show you a couple of different ways to apply it onto the fabric. And what I would recommend is I tend to use fray check. So I have gone around here with the fray check already. So this is a nice little nozzle. I'll just take this off so I can show you. And it does wet the fabric. So I'll just put a little dot of it there so you can see it goes into the fabric. Now, I've put a line on this fabric here already and it is dried already. Okay, so you would need to wait for that to dry. You put on wherever your line is so that it dries and then you can cut it out, and what that does is it reduces the fraying, hence fray check. Okay, now I've put it on here, you can't actually see it. You need to test it on your fabric because sometimes you can see it and sometimes you can't. On this particular fabric, it's really dried well. You can't see it at all. It's just here, the lines, and you can't see them at all. Okay, so I'm just going to start to cut this piece out so that you can see exactly what we're going to do and how, because you can see just here, I'll just move that over, you can see there how that's frayed and how it frays here, and you'll see the difference when I cut that line out. Okay, so I'm just gonna take that like that so that it doesn't get all over this part or all over my fabric. Okay, and I'm just going to cut along that line nice and carefully. Okay, so there's my first cut, and then my second one is about here. I think it's just about there actually with the fray check. It's very difficult to see when it's dried, if it dries perfectly clear. So what you may want to do is you may want to just put a little line on the back and then go along that line, and then you can use that line to cut it away later on. So I'm going to use that directly to the fabric. Okay, now there are other ways. You could actually put something like Bonder web on the back and then you could place that on and iron it on. If you're doing a very complex pattern, then that may be something that you would want to consider, because of course if you've got a load of pieces all laid out and then you accidentally tip it over and forget, they could go everywhere. So a lot of the embroiderers, they apply it on with Bonder web or something of that nature first. You can also machine embroider into it. You know, some people do the zigzag stitch down it. We're doing hand stitching, so I'm going to show you how to apply this on with the hand stitch method. Okay, so we're just going to apply that straight onto the fabric with that edge. So there's different ways of doing that, and I've got 3 plies of stranded cotton. So you can just come up and then down. Now, I wouldn't necessarily use this thickness of thread. However, just for demonstration purposes, this is a really nice thickness to use because you can clearly see it on the surface. So you could just come up and down like that. So we're just going to do a stab stitch into the fabric like that. Okay, so that's one way of applying your piece of work, your piece of material onto the surface that you need to apply it onto. Okay, and you do want to try and make sure that these are all nicely distanced. So some people actually draw lines on the fabric so they can make sure that their distance of stitches are exactly the same. Some people like to do it by eye. I'm purely doing it by eye here. The other thing that you want to make sure that you're doing is, so if you look at my stitching there, they're all more or less, let me just come up with that needle there and then I'll be able to show you a little bit easier. So I'm coming up on the very edge. If I came up a bit too close, it might tend to push it and then you'd end up getting a bit of a ridge. So you need to make sure that your edge is always, your thread is just always, you can see there, coming up just outside of that edge, not right against it, okay? And then you need to make sure that all those stitches are nicely at the same level, okay? Now that one is fractionally further in. You need to try and make sure that you get them all perfect, okay? Because then it will be the material that you notice, not the stitching. Okay, and that's what you want to notice. You don't want to notice all the masses of stitching that would be on there, because especially when you're doing the hand stitch applique, that's what you'll notice. Okay, so we'd come along there and we'd just go all the way along to the edge of our fabric. And as I say here, I'm using 3 strands of stranded cotton, but you would be best using something a bit, you know, some people actually use clear or they used a toned colour. It depends on the effect that you want to get. You might want to see your stitches, you may not. So obviously if you do want to see your stitches, then make sure that you go for a bold colour like this purple against the greeny pinky. But you may just decide to go for a green, and it may be a translucent type thread that's invisible against there as well. So the purpose of this is make sure that it's flat. So I would always give it a little stroke. Then what you can do is, the other technique of putting the edge on is to do like a blanket stitch. Okay, so I'm just going to come here. I'm not going to explain too much about the blanket stitch now, because there is another really good demonstration video for the blanket stitch. So I'm just going to put that stitch on there, and we come down here, and again just try and make sure that all your stitches are at the same level and that your actual stitches at the top are the same distance apart, and then you'll get this nice row of stitches. Okay, so we're just going to come down there and we're just going to come up there. Now this time this thread has gone this way, whereas last time it was a nice loop over here. So if that happens, you just need to pull that back up there like that. Okay, and we're just going to go like that. Now sometimes you do need to just pull that a little bit that way and then pull it back this way, and it nicely tightens that up. So again, we're just going to come down there. You can hold that stitch there, hold the thread back, and then just come up. You do want these to be quite straight, so this little bit here wants to be quite straight in line with your edge. So that's what you'd do, you'd go all the way around. Now the other method of applying it on is, instead of, because sometimes this edge is very, very frayy. Now you could prevent that if you use, say, an organza. You could use a soldering iron on it and then you get a really nice edge. If it's very frayy like this, what sometimes they do is they just fold this edge over. So you could fold it over like that, and you could then stitch it on. Now I would recommend, if you were going to do that, that you iron that as well, and then you get a nicer edge and it will make it lie much, much flatter. Okay, and that is applique. Thanks for watching. Give that stitch a go. If you've got any questions whatsoever, just put them in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, give us that thumbs up, and if you need any materials whatsoever, just click on our shop link.